Greetings, YouTube. Yesterday, in honor of Martin Luther King's birthday, someone posted a link to an anti-racist article written quite a while ago. The author uses the metaphor of the invisible knapsack to refer to privilege. The concept being that this invisible knapsack is full of the things that people of privilege just take for granted. You don't consider them. You never even worry about them. It's like fish never thinking about the water around them. And it resonated with me because quite recently I had someone on this particular channel talk to me about the concept that they felt that minorities could oppress majorities. And from their description, what it really sounded like was that there was a person that happened to be a member of a minority group and they were an ass. And they were vocal about it and they were unpleasant about it. And it wasn't that a minority was trying to oppress the majority. It was someone was really pushing people's buttons intentionally just to be a jerk. And you can't hold an entire group responsible for the actions of one member, regardless of whether they're the minority or the majority. And the author of this article lists 26 different bullet points, essentially, that she personally feels are important to remember when you are the majority and you are just used to having these rights without even thinking about it. Because in my experience, when the majority says they're being oppressed by a minority, what really is going on is that the majority is suddenly finding itself confronted with the fact that someone else wants the same privileges they have. And funnily enough, the majority doesn't like that. They don't want to give those privileges to somebody else. They feel like that is a loss on their part, even though they got those privileges through no just cause, just because they got born the right color for the most part in America. Because let's face it, in America, being born white is kind of like winning the lottery. But one of the points that she brings up is this one right here. I can go shopping alone most of the time, pretty much assured that I will not be followed or harassed. And that one just nails it on the head for me. See, I had a female friend of mine back in the 80s who worked at a fancy department store, Filene's, I believe, which is now out of business, and the place is now owned by Macy's, I believe. And whenever a black person walked into the store, they had a code. Someone who would see the black person would get on the phone and say, I'm paging Mr. Thomas. I don't remember the actual code, but that's just an example. There, of course, was no Mr. Thomas. It was a code that would warn all the other employees that there was a black person in the store. Because the assumption was, if a black person was in their fancy department store, they were there to rob them. Now, as Don Henley once said, you can steal a whole lot more money with a briefcase than you can with a gun. And the reality is that guys with briefcases have done far more harm to America than any shoplifter ever has. And in fact, the guys with the briefcases pretty much collapsed our entire economy. But they got away with it. Why? Because they're a member of the privileged group. And those black people in that department store weren't. I've never shaken the fact that when my friend told me that story. I bring it up often. It's important to remember that in not just living memory, but in recent memory, that kind of thing took place right here in the place I live. And it takes place again today. The machinations of racism are a little more subtle now. People have gotten better at hiding what they actually mean. But see, I'm a really white guy. In fact, if you get any whiter than me, I'd be translucent. And that means that a lot of folks who are bigots feel really comfortable around me. They feel like, I'm one of their own. And I don't dissuade them from that. I let them say what they want to say. And then I tell them they're a racist. It makes it really interesting conversation, I can tell you that. But it lets me see who they really are. When they stop pretending. When all the illusions that they've tacked onto themselves are gone. And I can see their really, truly ugly face.
So I suggest you go read the article. It's quite good. And look at the bullet points the author writes, because they are quite telling when it comes to privilege. And for anyone out there who sees this and is tempted to call me a race traitor, guess what? The only race I recognize is the human race. When it comes to bigotry and prejudice, I oppose them always. So yeah, maybe I am a race traitor. Because I'm just opposed to bigots. And I don't care what quote-unquote race they belong to. I'm always going to be opposed to them.